Did you know that one of England's most respected noblewomen vanished from her estate in the dead of night and was later discovered buried under her own rose garden? The year was 1811. Lady Eleanor Blackwood, known for her sharp intellect, calm demeanor, and influence in courtly circles, had just hosted a grand dinner party at her countryside manor. The wine had flowed, the music had played, and all seemed well, until the morning after, when Eleanor was nowhere to be found. The Blackwood estate, nestled in the foggy countryside of Yorkshire, had long been a place of admiration and envy. The mansion stood proudly among rolling hills and ancient trees, its stone facade etched with generations of wealth and power. Lady Eleanor, a widow and matriarch, lived there with her 2 children, a loyal maid named Mary, and a brother-in-law, Charles Blackwood, who had returned recently from abroad. Eleanor was a woman of mystery and resolve, following the suspicious death of her husband years earlier, an event officially ruled an accident. She had withdrawn slightly from high society, focusing instead on charity and family legacy. But rumors never left her side. Whispers of hidden affairs, political leverage, and a secret journal circulated among the elite. On the evening of her disappearance, Eleanor had entertained over a dozen prominent guests. All testified later that she appeared calm, even joyful. Around midnight, after seeing her guests to their carriages, she retired to her quarters, or so they believed. By morning, her room was undisturbed, her bed unslept. A search of the entire estate began immediately. It was days before anything was found. Eventually, Mary the maid reported a strange patch of freshly turned soil beneath the rose garden Eleanor herself had planted in memory of her late husband. It was there, buried beneath the roots of her favorite white roses, that her body was discovered. Hands bound, a silk scarf tight around her neck. Panic erupted. Who could have done such a thing, and why? Charles Blackwood, the brother-in-law, immediately became a suspect, and yet no arrest was ever made. The case grew colder with every passing season. Charles Blackwood left for the continent again soon after the burial. Mary disappeared, never seen again. The children were sent to distant relatives, and the estate was eventually sold to a wealthy industrialist. To this day, no one knows who murdered Lady Eleanor Blackwood. Was it Charles, desperate to claim an inheritance? Mary, driven by love or jealousy? Or someone else entirely? Hidden in plain sight that night among the guests, the rose garden still blooms, and the manor still stands, though many who visited swear they feel someone watching from the upstairs window. A woman in white, staring out into the fog, as if still waiting for her truth to be known. Did you know that a royal betrayal in 17th century Russia led to one of the most horrifying murders in imperial history? A crime so gruesome, it was erased from official records for nearly a century. This is the story of Anastasia Petrovna Romanov, a distant cousin to the Tsar, whose mysterious death in 1661 still baffles historians and leaves behind whispers of court conspiracies, forbidden love, and royal jealousy. Anastasia Petrovna was no ordinary noblewoman. She was born into wealth and lineage, raised within the shadow of the Kremlin. As a child, she was taught to read Latin, write poetry, and master court etiquette. By the age of 18, she was considered one of the most brilliant and beautiful women in Moscow's royal court. Her hair was said to shimmer like black silk, and her wit could match any statesman. But her beauty became a curse. Tsar Alexei, a ruler known for both kindness and cruelty, grew fond of Anastasia. Some say too fond. Though she was betrothed to Duke Mikhail Grigorovich, a war hero favored by the people, Alexei ordered the engagement annulled, citing vague political instability. Whispers spread across the court. The Tsar wanted her for himself. Anastasia, proud and principled, resisted. She continued to see Mikhail in secret, their meetings hidden by moonlight and guarded by loyal servants. But secrets in the Kremlin rarely stayed hidden. One winter night, Mikhail was arrested on charges of treason. Days later, his body was found hanging in his cell. Officially a suicide, but the bruises told another story. Grief-stricken yet defiant, Anastasia confronted the Tsar in front of his inner circle. What happened after that moment remains a mystery. The next morning, Anastasia was found dead in her chambers, her face pale, lips bruised, and a pool of blood beneath her bed. No wounds, no explanation. The royal court announced her death as natural causes brought on by illness. But those close to her knew better. Her maid, Elena, vanished the day after Anastasia's funeral. Her journals were confiscated. Her name erased from royal records for the next 89 years. Only centuries later, in a sealed monastery archive, a collection of letters was discovered, handwritten by Anastasia and smuggled to a nun. In them, she described being followed, threatened, and watched from behind mirrors. She feared a secret order within the court, men in crimson robes who served the Tsar not by law, but by oath. "If I die," she wrote in one letter, "let it be known it was not by fever, but by fear." Her death remains one of Imperial Russia's darkest mysteries. Was she poisoned, suffocated, or did a secret faction of royal assassins silence her to protect the Tsar's reputation? To this day, in the old royal wing of the Kremlin, guards report hearing soft sobs late at night and catching glimpses of a woman in a silver gown walking past frost-covered windows. They say she's looking for justice. They say she never found peace. They say Anastasia still walks the halls she once graced, waiting for the truth to be told. Did you know that a grieving widow once vanished from her estate, only to return days later, silent and barefoot, soaked in rain and forever changed? The year was 1843. Deep in the moors of Devonshire stood Blackridge Manor, a grand estate wrapped in fog and shadow. For over a century, it had been the home of the Ashcombe family, a line of decorated military officers, scholars, and nobles whose wealth and power were unquestioned. But beneath the splendor of its stone walls and sprawling gardens lay a secret, one that would come to light with the murder of Colonel Thomas Ashcombe and the disappearance of his widow, Eleanor. Eleanor Ashcombe was not a typical noblewoman. She was quiet, calculating, and impossibly elegant. At just 33, she had already endured war, childbirth, and the suffocating expectations of high society. Her marriage to Colonel Thomas was both a public alliance and a private cage. Thomas had returned from India years earlier, changed by war and weighed down by paranoia. Servants often heard shouting behind closed doors. Once, a stable boy claimed he saw the colonel hurling a decanter at his wife. But Eleanor never spoke ill of him, at least not in public. She hosted events, managed the household, and carried herself with dignity. But those who looked into her eyes swore they saw something else. A quiet fear, a longing for escape. On the night of October 12th, the manor held no guests. Rain lashed against the stained glass windows, and lightning lit up the hills beyond. The household had gone to bed early. At midnight, a single gunshot echoed through the halls. Then, silence. The next morning, Colonel Ashcombe was found dead in his study. His throat had been slit cleanly. His prized saber, gifted by the crown, lay at his side. Blood had pooled beneath his chair, and a single candle flickered weakly beside a half-written letter. But Eleanor was gone. The bedroom she shared with Thomas was untouched. Her wardrobe still held her gowns. Her favorite brooch was still pinned to her dressing table. But her shoes? Gone. Her shawl? Missing. And no carriage tracks led away from the estate. The staff were awakened and interrogated. No one had seen her leave. No one had heard her scream. It was as if she had vanished into the storm itself. The search began immediately. For days, constables, servants, and villagers combed the hills, searching the woods, checking the ditches and rivers. They found nothing. Then, on the fourth night, she returned. Eleanor walked barefoot through the front gate, her eyes hollow, her lips sealed. Her nightgown was torn, her feet bleeding. She refused to speak. She went straight to her room, locked the door, and did not emerge for 2 days. When the door was finally opened by force, she was sitting by the fireplace, staring into the flames. She simply said, "The dead do not rest here." The inquest was immediate. Suspicion fell on her instantly. She had motive. She had means, but no evidence. Colonel Ashcombe had no other enemies, at least not publicly. Only a few days earlier, he had accused the cook of poisoning his wine, an allegation dismissed as drunken fantasy. He had also fired the groundskeeper without warning, claiming the man was spying for a rival estate. His behavior had grown increasingly erratic in recent weeks. Eleanor, on the other hand, was serene. Cold, perhaps, but not unstable. Among the household were others with secrets. The maid, Lucy, had served Eleanor for over a decade, yet when questioned, she hesitated. She admitted to hearing a voice arguing late that night, but said it was not a man's voice. The housekeeper, Mrs. Denham, claimed she had seen a figure in black walk past the hallway mirror just after midnight. But when she checked, no one was there. And then there was Edward Ashcombe, the colonel's cousin, who stood to gain inheritance should both Eleanor and Thomas die without issue. He had arrived unannounced just 2 days before the murder, claiming to be on his way to London. He was charming, inquisitive, and always near the wine. No charges were ever brought. Eleanor refused to testify. She closed the west wing of the manor and dismissed several staff. She took her meals alone, wrote letters no one read, and began wandering the halls at night, Some said she spoke to her late husband's portrait. Others claimed she was seen outside in the gardens long after midnight, whispering into the wind. In the months that followed, strange things began happening. A mirror in the main hall shattered without reason. The bells rang by themselves at night. A child visiting from the village claimed she saw a man in red with no face in the upper corridor. Eleanor never reacted. She only grew quieter. 2 years later, a letter surfaced. It had been hidden inside a hollowed-out book in Thomas's library, addressed to no one. In it, the colonel detailed his growing fear that he was being watched, not from outside the house, but from within. He wrote of locked doors being found open, journals missing, and voices in the study when no one was there. He believed Eleanor was plotting against him, but more chillingly, he believed something ancient lived beneath the manor. He wrote, "I hear breathing in the walls." This led to a renewed investigation. The manor cellar was reopened. Workers discovered an old tunnel sealed off behind wine racks, leading to a collapsed crypt predating the Ashcombe family. Inside, they found human remains, 6 skeletons, shackled to the stone. No records ever mentioned these burials. Who were they, and why were they hidden? Eleanor died in 1861. She left behind no children and no will. Her last known words, spoken to the maid Lucy, were, "Don't let him in tonight. He always comes through the mirror." After her death, the manor was sold to a banker from London who stayed just 1 year before abandoning it. No one has lived there since. To this day, Blackridge Manor stands in ruin, windows boarded, gates rusted shut. But locals still report strange lights in the study. One man, a photographer, claimed he saw a woman in black standing in the window, her hands pressed to the glass, her eyes wide with terror. He ran before taking the photo. Was Eleanor the killer, or the last witness to a secret older than the manor itself? Was it Edward who came to claim an inheritance early? Or was it Thomas, losing his grip on sanity, who created a monster of his own fears? We may never know, but one thing is certain. Something died in that house that night. Something more than just a man. Did you know that one of America's earliest ghost towns hides a murder so terrifying, even local historians refuse to discuss it? Welcome to Cold Creek, Nevada, a mining town once rich with gold, power, and ambition. But in the winter of 1874, all of that changed with the chilling murder of Lydia Harrow, a young woman whose scream was said to echo through the valley long after her death. "Ah, you got a package gone missing, huh? Sounds like trouble. Let me see what I can dig up. I'm chasing a trail of numbers through the system. There it is, shipped 2 days ago, supposed to land on your doorstep by noon today. But it's still out there, somewhere. Maybe it's stuck at a warehouse. Maybe it took a wrong turn down a dark alley. Either way, I'll get to it." The town was rough. Saloon brawls were common. Men worked long, grueling hours underground. And above ground, greed and suspicion grew. It was rumored that the Harrows had discovered a secret gold vein, one not registered with the town's mining office. Whispers circulated that someone in town wanted it for themselves. One night, during a brutal snowstorm, Lydia was heard screaming from the family's cabin. By the time neighbors arrived, the door was wide open, snow covering the floor, and her body was found lying face down near the fireplace, throat slit, and eyes still wide with terror. No signs of forced entry, no footprints except those of her own. The sheriff investigated, but no one was ever charged. Her father, distraught and trembling, could hardly speak. He claimed someone had been watching them for weeks, a man with a limp who never spoke. Her mother fell into silence, refusing to speak of the night at all. The Harrow family left Cold Creek within a month. Years later, a prospector named Bill Rankin claimed he had found Lydia's locket buried under the floorboards of the town's abandoned schoolhouse. Inside the locket was a folded note. He said he'd kill them all. To this day, no one knows who he was. In 1928, a group of amateur historians tried to rebuild Cold Creek's story, hoping to revive tourism. They stayed 3 nights in the ruins and left without finishing their documentation, refusing to speak of their experience. One member of the team, Margaret Ellis, later told a journalist, "We heard her. We all heard her. And we saw someone else. He wasn't alive." Locals in nearby towns began calling it the Curse of Cold Creek. The name Lydia Harrow became legend, not just as a victim, but as a lingering soul. To this day, ghost hunters and thrill seekers visit the ruins, hoping to catch a glimpse of Lydia's spirit or uncover clues to her murder. Many report chills, electrical disturbances, and inexplicable whispers in the wind. Some even say the snow doesn't fall naturally around the cabin. It spins upward, as if resisting gravity. Despite modern interest, no formal investigation has ever been reopened. No new evidence has been found. Lydia's grave, unmarked, sits beneath a pine tree outside the cabin ruins. Every year, on the anniversary of her death, a single white rose appears on the grave, placed by no one seen. The murder of Lydia Harrow remains one of America's most chilling frontier mysteries. Was it greed, a jealous rival, or a man with a limp who watched from the shadows? We may never know, but Cold Creek remembers, and so do the ghosts. Did you know that a noblewoman once stood trial for the murder of her own sister, only to vanish from the courtroom moments before the final verdict? The year was 1894, and the trial of Lady Agnes Redgrave captivated all of England. Newspapers called it the Curse of Rose Hall. But what happened inside that ancient manor still baffles historians today. Rose Hall Manor, located on the misty cliffs of Cornwall, was a Gothic masterpiece. Its spires like daggers in the sky, windows tall and watchful. It had belonged to the Redgrave family for generations, a proud line of judges, authors, and explorers. Lady Agnes Redgrave was the youngest of 2 daughters, known for her bold opinions and beauty that drew eyes at every gathering. Her older sister, Lady Eliza, was more reserved, quiet, kind, and cautious. The sisters were said to be close, until they weren't. In the spring of that year, guests arrived at Rose Hall to celebrate Eliza's engagement to a rising politician, Charles Wren. Charles was handsome, charming, and came from money. But there were whispers that he was once infatuated with Agnes. Some even claimed he had proposed to her years earlier, and that she had rejected him coldly. Eliza, unaware of any past entanglement, believed she had found the love of her life. On the night of the engagement celebration, Rose Hall was filled with music, champagne, and laughter. But as midnight approached, Eliza suddenly disappeared from the drawing room. Her absence was first dismissed as fatigue, but by morning, panic had set in. The staff searched the grounds. Guests offered help. Then, in the early hours, a stable hand found her body at the bottom of the West Tower. Her neck broken, her face pale, and a torn ribbon still clutched in her hand. The investigation was immediate, brutal, and full of pressure. Lady Agnes was the first-person quest. Servants had heard raised voices behind Eliza's door the night before. A maid, trembling under oath, claimed she saw Agnes enter the tower hallway shortly before the fall. The local constable, already wary of the Redgrave family's history of silence and secrets, moved quickly to arrest Agnes. Despite her fierce denial of any involvement, the trial became a national spectacle. Crowds gathered outside the court in Plymouth. Sketch artists captured Agnes's every glare, her cold posture, her refusal to weep. The press dubbed her the Marble Widow, a woman without sorrow, without guilt. But there were strange elements to the case that no one could explain. A journal found in Eliza's room hinted at her fears. Entries describing whispers in the walls, sightings of a woman in white watching her sleep, and a sense that someone had returned. Eliza had even written, "Agnes will never believe me, but I know what I saw." Even more disturbing was the history of the West Tower itself. Legend had it that during the 17th century, a Redgrave ancestor had kept his wife imprisoned there, claiming she was possessed. She died within those walls, and some claimed her cries still echoed through the stone. Eliza's body had been found at the very base of that same cursed tower. Throughout the trial, Agnes maintained her innocence. She claimed she had gone to her room early that night, had taken sleeping drops prescribed by the family doctor, and remembered nothing until morning. Her lawyer presented a theory that Eliza had fallen by accident, perhaps while trying to flee something or someone. But no one believed it. The mood turned against Agnes. Then, on the final day of the trial, as the jury retired to deliberate, Agnes asked to be excused to the adjoining room for air. She was never seen again. Her cloak was found hanging on the peg. Her shoes remained by the door. A guard swore he had stood watch the entire time and seen no one leave. But Agnes Redgrave was gone. Vanished. As if the walls had swallowed her whole. The courtroom erupted. Panic spread. The trial was declared null, and a warrant was issued. But no trace of her was ever found. Not in the woods, not in the caves near the coast, not in the house she once ruled. Rumors exploded. Some believed she had faked her disappearance with the help of the family lawyer. Others claimed she had thrown herself into the sea. But the most chilling theory came from an old housekeeper who had worked at Rose Hall for 40 years. She claimed that the Redgrave sisters were never two, that Eliza and Agnes had always been different. When asked what she meant, she said, "Sometimes the one you see isn't the one you're talking to." In the decades that followed, Rose Hall changed hands many times. Families came and left. Some claim to hear footsteps in the West Tower, or to find windows open after they had been locked. One guest, a writer staying the summer, wrote in his journal that he saw a pale woman with dark eyes standing at the edge of the cliff, whispering to the sea. He called her Agnes. To this day, the fate of Lady Agnes Redgrave remains a mystery. Did she kill her sister in a jealous rage? Did she flee in guilt and vanish into history? Or was she never guilty at all, only another victim of the curse that clung to Rose Hall like the mist? We may never know, but every year, on the anniversary of Eliza's death, someone leaves a single black ribbon tied to the tower's gatepost. No one has ever been seen doing it, and no one has ever claimed the gesture. But the ribbon is always there. Did you know that in 19th century Venice, a young composer disappeared on the eve of his greatest performance and was later found dead inside the church organ, his mouth sewn shut with piano wire? His name was Lucian Bianchi, and in 1869, he was hailed as one of Italy's greatest rising talents. He was just 27, known for his haunting melodies and unmatched ability to fuse sorrow and beauty into sound. But Lucian wasn't only known for his music. He was infamous for the rumors that surrounded him, that his music came to him in dreams, that he never wrote his notes down, and that he had once collapsed after hearing a tune that did not belong to this world. Lucian lived alone in a modest apartment above the canals of Venice. He had no family left, no close friends, and no students. His only companion was an old, battered violin given to him by a traveling monk when he was just a boy. He claimed the instrument had a spirit, and that when it was played at midnight, it revealed things not meant for daylight. On the night of December 3rd, 1869, Lucian was to debut his new masterpiece, La Notte Eterna, the Eternal Night, in the Grand Basilica of San Silvestro. It was to be performed once and never again. The audience was filled with nobles, critics, and royalty. But as the orchestra waited and the candles flickered, Lucian never arrived. At first, people thought he was ill or lost. A search began. His apartment was untouched. His coat and hat still hung on the rack. A cup of coffee still warm. No signs of forced entry. No letters. No notes. The performance was canceled. The basilica emptied, and the night fell silent. 3 days later, a janitor at San Silvestro began noticing a strange smell coming from the massive pipe organ. When he opened the rear panel to check for rodents, he screamed. Inside, curled up in the belly of the instrument, was Lucian Bianchi's lifeless body. His face was pale. His eyes and his mouth was sewn shut with piano wire. His fingers, raw and bloodied, were frozen in a position resembling a conductor's stance. The authorities were baffled. No one had seen him enter the church. The organ had been locked from the outside. There were no signs of struggle. And the most chilling detail, one of the organ's pipes had been rewired to play a melody. A melody no one recognized. The autopsy found no drugs, no poisons, no wounds, other than the sewn mouth and torn fingertips. The official cause of death was ruled extreme cardiac trauma. At the funeral, a mysterious figure dressed in black stood at a distance. He wore a mask, like those worn during carnival, and held a folded sheet of music. After the burial, he disappeared into the fog. The sheet was later found, resting against Lucien's gravestone. It was blank, except for a single line written in ink. Music is the only truth they cannot burn. In the weeks that followed, strange events occurred across Venice. Musicians reported waking up with melodies in their heads that they could not stop playing. One violinist claimed he was possessed by a tune that made his hands bleed. A child prodigy at the conservatory went missing after claiming she could hear Lucien's violin under the water. San Silvestro closed its doors for months. Priests refused to play the organ again. One older bishop confessed that Lucien had approached him weeks before his death, saying, "I am not writing this music. I am only remembering it." Investigators dug into Lucien's past. They found records of a young boy who had been part of a monastery in northern Italy. A boy who had lived alone in the crypts, kept apart from the other children. His name had been changed when he was adopted by a Venetian merchant. But the monks remembered him well. They said he would hum songs in dead languages, that he spoke to shadows, that he once fell into a trance during a funeral and didn't wake for 3 days. When he finally opened his eyes, he said, "The music below is louder than the music above." No one could explain what La Notte Eterna truly was. The original composition vanished. Some believe Lucien burned it before the performance. Others say it was stolen, and that whoever has it now is cursed. To this day, no one has played music inside San Silvestro's main chamber. The organ stands still, its pipes covered in black cloth. But every December 3rd at exactly midnight, people in nearby buildings say they hear a soft melody echoing through the walls, a tune no one can identify, but everyone agrees is heartbreakingly beautiful. And beneath it all, they swear they hear a voice, faint, distant, and trembling, humming the final notes, with a mouth that should no longer sing. ... Did you know that a woman once claimed she witnessed her own murder before it even happened? In the year 1852, in the quiet town of Ashcroft Hollow, Massachusetts, a chilling mystery unfolded inside a house so cursed that the townsfolk refused to even speak its name: the Whitlow House. Eleanor Whitlow was a 29-year-old schoolteacher, quiet, observant, and respected. She lived with her aging Aunt Beatrice in a colonial-style home inherited through generations. The house sat at the edge of a dense forest, its shutters always half-closed, its halls filled with the scent of lavender and old books. Eleanor lived a simple life. She taught children by day and read poetry by candlelight each evening. But on the morning of September 7th, 1852, she approached the local sheriff with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes and said, "I've seen what they will do to me, and you mustn't let them seal the room again." The sheriff was baffled. She wouldn't give details, only repeated that she'd seen her murder happen in a dream, so vividly, so painfully, that she woke up unable to breathe. She claimed she saw herself bound to the chair in the attic, a rope around her neck, her fingers bloody from scratching the floorboards. No one believed her. Eleanor had always been imaginative, deeply sensitive to dreams and signs. People assumed it was exhaustion or illness. She was sent home with rest advised. 3 days later, Eleanor was found dead, exactly as she described. She was discovered by her Aunt Beatrice, hanging from a beam in the attic. The same beam Eleanor had pointed to in her dream. Her fingernails were chipped and broken. Rope burns marked her wrists and ankles, suggesting she had struggled violently before death. A trail of blood led to a small crawlspace, where investigators found something deeply unsettling. A name carved into the wall, Eleanor, over and over, as if written by her own hand, in madness. The room was sealed immediately. The official story: suicide due to hysteria. Case closed. But the town whispered. A few months earlier, Eleanor had confided in a friend, another teacher named Ruth, that she believed her house was whispering things to her. That late at night, she could hear her name being called from behind the walls. Ruth had dismissed it as loneliness. But after Eleanor's death, she returned to Whitlow House, and what she found changed everything. In Eleanor's room, tucked behind a floorboard, was a journal. Dozens of pages filled with chilling entries. The dream is clearer now. The attic smells like ash, even though no fire burns. I see him now. No face, just a shadow that moves when the wind is still. He hums before I sleep. The rope waits for me. Ruth gave the journal to the sheriff. But by then, Aunt Beatrice had already fled Ashcroft Hollow. The house was locked. No one would go inside. In 1863, during the Civil War, a Union deserter broke into Whitlow House to hide. He was found 3 days later, half mad, barefoot, and unable to speak. He had carved the word Whitlow into his own arm with a nail. When questioned, he wrote on paper, "The girl was right. He waits in the attic." In the decades that followed, the house passed from owner to owner, most staying no longer than a season. One claimed that she saw a woman standing at the attic window every night at 3:17 a.m., even though the room was C. Another, a local pastor, tried to cleanse the house with prayer and scripture, and suffered a stroke hours later. Finally, in 1928, the attic was reopened by a team of paranormal researchers from Boston. What they found made headlines. The beam from which Eleanor was hanged still bore deep rope scars. But worse, the wall behind the crawlspace had been torn open, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside was a small wooden chair, facing the corner. The dust on it was undisturbed, but someone had recently etched a final word into the seat: forgiven. There was no sign of who did it. To this day, Whitlow House remains abandoned. No one enters. Teenagers dare each other to knock on the attic window, but few make it past the rusted gate. Some nights, locals say, you can hear the low creaking of rope and a woman's voice whispering, "I told you I saw it all." Did you know that a bride once disappeared on her wedding night and was later seen, still in her gown, walking the same corridor, exactly 100 years later? The year was 1875, and Windsley Hall was one of the most celebrated estates in southern England. With its ivy-covered walls, moonlit gardens, and grand ballroom lined with mirrors. It had witnessed many royal visits, musical soirees, and lavish banquets, but none so talked about as the wedding of Evelyn Hargrave, the youngest daughter of Lord Jonathan Hargrave, to Captain Arthur Levington, a decorated officer just returned from India. The union was perfect on paper. Wealth, beauty, youth, and social prestige. Everything was in place. The ceremony was held at dusk, under arching willows beside the estate's lake. Guests toasted with crystal glasses. A violinist played Evelyn's favorite waltz as she and Arthur danced, her white gown shimmering under chandeliers. But Evelyn never made it to the bridal suite. Sometime after midnight, she vanished. At first, it was assumed she had gone for a walk in the garden, something she was known to do, even in formal gowns. But as the minutes passed, and then the hours, panic set in. The house was searched from top to bottom. Servants interrogated. Dogs sent to the woods. The only clue? A single white slipper found on the staircase leading to the east corridor, a wing of the estate that had been locked for years after a fire gutted several rooms. By dawn, the wedding turned into a tragedy. Arthur, heartbroken and bewildered, refused to leave the estate. He spent weeks wandering the halls, calling her name. Evelyn's portrait, painted just days before, was draped in black. Her room was sealed, and the east corridor locked again, permanently. But the mystery deepened. 1 month later, a maid cleaning the mirror-lined ballroom claimed she saw Evelyn, still in her wedding dress, walk past her reflection. But when she turned around, the corridor behind her was empty. Another guest swore she heard someone humming the wedding waltz from behind the sealed corridor. No one could explain it. Then came the diary, tucked behind a loose stone in the garden wall. Evelyn's personal journal was found. Its final entry, dated the night of the wedding, read, "I saw her again, the woman in my gown. She whispered to me in the dressing mirror. She said, 'Only one of us walks forward. The other must remain.' I think I understand now." Rumors spread that Evelyn had been hallucinating, that she suffered from mirror delusions, a condition that some physicians of the time loosely described as ghost sickness. But those closest to her insisted she was of sound mind, intelligent, happy, in love. In 1891, Arthur Levington died in the same estate, never having remarried. He requested in his will to be buried facing the east corridor, in case she returns. Then, exactly 100 years later, on June 2nd, 1975, at midnight, something happened. A group of students from Oxford University had rented Windsley Hall, then converted into a private retreat for a history seminar. One of them, a girl named Marianne, wandered toward the east corridor during a storm-induced power outage. According to her statement, she saw a woman in a Victorian bridal gown walking slowly toward the sealed door, barefoot, trailing mud and leaves. The woman turned and smiled, and then vanished. The students laughed it off as a prank, until Marianne showed them something. A torn, yellowed handkerchief, she said, the woman dropped. On the corner was stitched the initials E.H., Evelyn Hargrave. The estate was shut down the following year. In 1998, a documentary crew received special permission to film inside Windsley Hall. On the third night of shooting, one of their motion-triggered cameras caught something chilling. A faint figure, glowing in the moonlight, walking past the same mirror-lined ballroom. Her face blurred, but the dress, unmistakably a wedding gown. Historians have tried to explain the event for decades. Some say Evelyn had a mental break, fled into the woods, and drowned in the lake, though no body was ever found. Others believe she accidentally entered the East Corridor and perished in a hidden collapse. Historians have tried to explain the event for decades. Some say Evelyn had a mental break, fled into the woods, and drowned in the lake, though no body was ever found. Others believe she accidentally entered the East Corridor and perished in a hidden collapse. But the servants had their own theory, one they never spoke aloud during their lifetimes. They believed Evelyn had not been taken, but replaced. In the oldest legends of the region, there are tales of mirror brides, spirits who appear in reflections, offering women their own face in exchange for something else. To this day, no one knows what really happened to Evelyn Hargrave. But every June 2nd, when the moon is full, locals claim to hear a soft melody drifting from the East Wing, the same wedding waltz that played the night she disappeared. And if you pass the ballroom mirrors at just the right angle, you might see her standing behind you, waiting to walk forward again. Did you know that a woman once inherited a house from her estranged mother, only to find a sealed room in which every wall was painted with her name? Her name was Clara Bell, and she had spent most of her life avoiding the past. Her mother, Margaret Bell, had been committed to a mental asylum in 1989 after being found wandering barefoot through the woods of Crowley's Cross, Virginia, covered in mud and blood, clutching a broken key and whispering, "I sealed it. I sealed it. No one must open it." Margaret lived in silence for nearly 20 years until her sudden death in 2009. Clara, then 32, received a letter from a lawyer. She was the sole heir of Bell Manor, a Victorian house on the outskirts of Crowley's Cross, a place she hadn't visited since she was 7. She almost refused, but curiosity, or fate, brought her back. The house was untouched, preserved in time. Dust coated every surface. Furniture stood as if waiting for someone to sit. Her childhood drawings were still on the fridge, but something was off. There were exactly 13 locked doors in the house. 12 of them opened easily with the old skeleton key set left in the kitchen drawer. But the 13th door, a heavy oak frame at the end of the second-floor hallway, painted deep red, would not budge. On it was a small brass plaque. It simply read, "Clara's room." She had no memory of this room. At first, she ignored it, began cleaning, sorting, living. But the house resisted. Lights flickered, ticked backward. And every night at 3:03 a.m., the door handle on the red room would click 3 times, but never open. Then came the journal, tucked in a floorboard beneath her mother's bed. Margaret's journal was filled with disturbing entries. "She's back. Clara came through the mirror again. I hear her humming in the red room, but Clara is still at school. I locked it. I locked her in. I'm sorry. I had no choice." Clara's blood ran cold. She didn't remember any of this, but deep down, something told her it might be true. The next night, she tried recording the red door. She set up a camera in the hallway. At 3:03, the door handle clicked 3 times, just like always. But in the footage, something new appeared. A shadow on the floor, long and human-shaped, moving toward the camera, then vanishing as the handle stilled. She called the police. They searched the house. No signs of forced entry, no signs of tampering. Old houses creak, they said. But Clara knew it wasn't the house that creaked. It was whatever was inside. She became obsessed, reading old town archives, interviewing former neighbors. And that's when she found the photo. It was taken in 1981. A black and white image of Margaret and a small girl, standing in front of Bell Manor. But Clara was born in 1977. In 1981, she would have been 4. In the photo, the girl looks at least 10. And her face looked just like Clara. She showed the photo to the lawyer who had handled the estate. He turned pale. "I've seen her," he whispered. "She stood at the edge of the driveway when I visited the house. I thought she was you." That night, Clara did the unthinkable. She forced the red door open. The room inside was ice cold. Every wall was painted red, not just with paint, but with writing. Dozens, maybe hundreds of times, her name. Clara, 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 Clara. In the center of the room sat a child's chair, turned toward the wall. On it, a porcelain doll with a cracked face and one eye missing. In its lap, another key. She turned to run, but the door had closed behind her. From the wall, something whispered, "I was here first." The next morning, Clara was found on the lawn by a passing hiker, barefoot, disoriented, and silent, just like her mother. She now lives in a private psychiatric facility, just like Margaret once did. No one has heard her speak since. Bell Manor remains sealed by the state. The Red Room was photographed once before it was boarded up. In the photo, the doll is gone. But the walls, they still say her name. Here. Did you know that a single painting has been linked to at least 6 mysterious deaths across 3 different countries? And yet, no one has ever dared to destroy it. Its name is La Sorella Piange, the sister who weeps. Painted in 1864 by the Italian artist Giovanni Rinaldi, the portrait shows a young woman in a black veil, sitting beside a window, staring blankly at something out of frame. Her eyes appear glassy, and her cheeks are streaked with faint gray lines, the trails of old tears. But no one knows who she was. The painting has no signature, and Rinaldi, a once famous painter, disappeared the same week it was completed. The first death occurred in Florence, 1865, when the painting was first displayed at a private gallery. The curator, a man named Paolo Vescucci, was found dead in his office with a letter pinned to his chest. The letter read, "She weeps because she remembers. I remember now too." After that, the painting was sold to a collector in Vienna. 3 weeks later, his wife drowned herself in their garden fountain. Fully dressed, holding a flower, identical to the one depicted faintly in the painting's lower corner. In 1889, the painting appeared at an estate auction in Belgium. A young noblewoman, Lady Evangeline Dumont, bought it and hung it in her reading room. According to her staff, she became obsessed with it, speaking to the painting late at night, claiming the woman in black was whispering her name. She was found dead 14 days later. Poison. No signs of struggle. Her final journal entry? She wants me to see it too, but I already have. The Belgian authorities tried to track the history of the painting, but found only gaps. There was no proof of who had painted it, no title in any registry, and yet the painting moved from collector to collector, always off record, always in whispers. In 1921, it resurfaced in London, in the possession of an eccentric American historian named Clive Hargrove. Hargrove claimed he had deciphered the mystery, that the painting was not of a living person, but of a woman who had once confessed to a murder she didn't commit, just to protect someone she loved. He believed the painting was a memorial, a living confession. But before he could publish his research, he was found dead in his study. The cause? Heart failure. But his mouth was full of ashes. His manuscript was missing. Over the years, the painting was blamed for more strange incidents. A museum fire in Prague that mysteriously stopped right before reaching the wall where it hung. A night guard in Paris who vanished without a trace during his shift. And in 1974, a group of art students who broke into a closed exhibit to touch the cursed painting, only to crash their car in silence on the way home. All three died. The radio was still on, playing a song about a sister wolf. Experts, skeptics, and even clergy have tried to debunk the rumors. Some say it's mass hysteria. Others suggest it's all coincidence. But there's one thing no one can explain. The painting never ages. Photographs from 1865 and today show the canvas with no cracks, no fading. And the woman's eyes, somehow, they seem wetter now. In 2003, the painting was placed in the Raventon Gallery of Cursed Objects in Amsterdam, behind glass, under surveillance, and strictly no touching. But guards say they still hear weeping sounds in the early hours. One claimed to see a handprint form inside the glass, as if someone wanted out. The most terrifying part? No one remembers donating it to the museum. There are no records, no transfer. It just appeared one morning, hanging silently where it shouldn't be. Today, visitors report unease around the piece. Some feel watched. Others claim the woman's gaze follows them. But if you look closely, deep into the background of the canvas, just beyond the window, you might notice something new. A second figure, barely visible, standing in the fog, staring back at her. Or is it at you?